My best friend, whom I grew up with, used to get teased a lot about being a mama's boy. Honestly, now that I look back on it, he's always had a very weird relationship with his mother. As we got older and started getting into girls more, he would say weird stuff, and normally, I'd laugh it off, calling him a weirdo, or as we got older, I'd tell him he needs to get out of the house more. While checking out girls, he'd say things like, "My mom has a way better body than she could ever have," or "My mom's chest is way bigger," and stuff like that. As far as I can tell, it's always been him and his mom. Growing up, I had never seen him get a girlfriend. I mean, he talked to girls and stuff, but I never physically saw him have a relationship with any girl until the one he got married to. Fast forward to this past weekend, and his wife, who I'm really cool with, says to me, "I hate it when he goes on his family trips because whenever he comes back home to me, he's always cold and acts like a jerk to me." So then, we started talking about his family trips. I remember when he started taking family trips when he got married. I always thought that because he was old enough and mature now, he'd go and spend time with his father or something. I don't really know. But his wife said it was just him and his mom, and they do this family trip every month or so. He takes family trips over the weekend with just him and his mom every other month. It started to become more frequent the longer his marriage went on. I spoke to him today and just joked around about stuff pertaining to his situation, and he got kind of agitated towards me. He said, "What, you think I'm doing it with my mom? What kind of freak does that?" I just rolled with it, kind of laughed it off, and said I was just messing with him, but his reaction was not genuine at all. He's like a brother to me, so should I just let this go and forget about it? I don't want to ruin our relationship or sour it or even possibly uncover something that makes him do something extremely irrational. Update 1. Over this past week, my wife, my friend's wife, and I sat at their house and had a long discussion on how to approach this very delicate situation. We decided that it's best to just simply come out and talk about what is going on while expressing our feelings. His wife definitely wanted to talk about everything but didn't want to do it alone, so she asked if we could sit in with them and let her get down to what's really going on. Fast forward to Saturday, and I'm sitting with my wife on one couch, and he and his wife are sitting on the other couch watching TV and talking. His wife grabs the remote, turns the TV off, and says we need to have a talk, all of us. For some reason, she chose to completely ignore everything we went over, how we were going to try and break the ice and lightly touch on the situation, and try to be welcoming and understanding. She just went straight for the throat with, "What's going on with you and your mother? You need to be honest with me." Everything we planned went right out the window within the very first few seconds. It was like she was attacking him, backing him into a corner instead of trying to be there for him. I was angry, I won't lie, but it's his wife, so I couldn't say anything. She bombarded him with all these questions and accusations, and when she finally let up, I was able to quickly get in and try to bring the volume of the room down a bit. I brought up stuff from our past when we were kids and in school. I laughed a little and threw in a few jokes, and thank goodness my wife was there to laugh and try to help make light of some of what was going on, but he had this look of disgust and defeat. He never commented back on anything, not a single peep, just sat there quietly in what seemed like he was festering in his own misery. As soon as I was done, his wife immediately went back to full-on attack mode with, "You just gonna sit there while we ask you these questions? Your silence speaks volumes." After about half an hour of us asking him questions, he stood up and finally responded. He was angry that we would suggest these things and asked us if we were all sick-minded people, trying to turn the tables on us. That's when his wife stood up and started crying. She accused him of lying because whenever he lies, he touches his face a lot and looks at the floor, which is totally true. She cried more and screamed, asking him very personal questions about their marriage. To that day, I was always kinda jealous of their marriage. They always seemed happier than us, never really argued, very passionate towards each other, and they never ever really complained, but wow was I wrong. She said things like, "Is that why we never have intimacy because you're out there with your mother? You are sick in the head, you need help, therapy, and a psychiatrist." She brought up all these things about them never having intimacy, never spending time together, he never gives her compliments, treats her poorly, ignores her when she's talking to him, holds grudges against her for months at a time, and the list goes on and on. Then she stopped and started dry heaving, put her hand over her mouth, and said she's gonna throw up. My wife got up and held her as she continued to dry heave and called him a sicko. Then he just said, "Screw you all," and stormed out of the house. I ran and caught up to him, asking him to come back and calm down, but he ignored me entirely. He called his mom, and she came and picked him up a few blocks down the road where he was just standing while I tried talking to him. When he got in the car, he slammed the door, rolled down the window, and said, "Never ever talk to me again, I'm deleting you out of my life for good." Then rolled the window up, and that was the last I spoke with him. On Monday, I went over to his mother's house, and she refused to open the door and even threatened to call the police on me if I didn't leave. His wife hasn't seen or spoken to him since that Saturday, but we all know exactly where he is. I'm going to give everything some time to cool down a bit and call over there on Friday, hopefully talking to him or his mother. His wife went to file for divorce. She asked me not to come over anymore. My best friend has blocked me on everything. Update 2. After not talking to my best friend for over a year and thinking that I lost him forever, I received a very interesting call 2 weeks ago. It was him, and he wanted to talk. He asked to meet at our normal hangout spot, and I said, yeah. I didn't know what to think honestly. I was happy, but I also was extremely worried. When we met up, he looked awful. His face was pale, bags under his eyes, and he looked miserable. I ran over to him and gave him a big ass hug. I started crying and said how sorry I was for accusing him of that type of stuff and how he's my brother no matter what and all this other stuff, mostly just spilling my guts and blabbering away to him. He hugged me back, and we both cried and apologized. Two grown-ass men crying like babies. After the initial waterworks, we sat down, and he told me how his wife had divorced him and how she spread all these lies about him and stuff on her Facebook. How he had gotten fired from his job because of those lies and all of this other stuff that all came from that messed up attempt at an intervention. I just sat there feeling like complete trash, knowing that I caused all of this. Just as I was about to apologize, he cut me off and said, "There is something I need to tell you. Remember when I was younger and my parents got that divorce, and I told you that mom got really crazy afterwards?" He told me that after the divorce she started drinking a lot. Sometimes she wouldn't even be able to take him to school or go to work the next day because she'd be so sick. The drinking got worse, and one day when he was 15 and sleeping in his bed, his mom came home super late and came into his room completely hammered and SA'd him. After that night, she'd drink, get drunk, and then SA him, and when she was sober, she'd act like nothing happened. She even started telling him that he was the man of the house and that he had certain responsibilities now that he's the man of the house. This continued all the way up until January 1st of this year. He finally had enough and put a stop to it. He said he hasn't seen or talked to his mom since March of this year. I just started crying, like seriously crying. Here I was thinking I was his best friend, and I didn't even know what was going on all these years. He even said how he thought about deleting himself until he met his wife and she took him out of that house, but his mother would still call him over or plan getaways just to get him away from her. His mother hated his wife with a passion. I never knew he was suffering alone all of these years. How could I even begin to call him my best friend or my brother? And I was never there one time for him out of all these years he was going through stuff. He asked me to not say anything to my partner, and if I could keep this between me and him. Of course, I agreed without hesitation. We spoke about him getting help, and he made me promise not to say anything about this to anyone. He said he doesn't want his mom to get into any trouble, and he doesn't want her to suffer. I cannot for the life of me believe that after all these years she's harmed him, he's still willing to sit here and protect her. He even made me promise not to do anything. Update 3. It's been almost 2 weeks. He seems like he wants to get help, but he doesn't ever make the effort to do so. Maybe he's afraid or ashamed? I called a support line for his situation and I spoke to a few people. Everyone said pretty much the same thing. I cannot force him to get help. He has to both need and want to be helped. He has to put the effort in doing so. I also went to the police station and asked a few questions, but nothing can happen any further until he chooses to come forward with anything. But I'm not going to push him to do anything as of right now. I mostly just wanted some information and answers about a few things. I moved him in with us for a while, until he gets back on his feet. The Thrift hotel he was staying at was disgusting, but he's good with us now. We've talked and also played a few co-op games together, but whenever the talk comes up about what to do next, he switches it to finding a job and getting himself together. He has mentioned a few times needing therapy and getting help, but never acts on it. Would it be okay for him to just up and get a job and move on, or should he try and get some help before that?